choose to go to the moon in this decade and do the other things, not because they are easy, but because they are hard.
So thanks for joining us today. I'm Janet Petro, Director of the Kennedy Space Center, and I'm joined today virtually and in person with others who have also had the honor of serving the Kennedy Space Center in this same role. Allow me to introduce our guests today, although they really don't need an introduction. With me here in the studio is Jay Honeycutt, who served as a 6th director, and also Bill Parsons, who was the 9th director. And thanks to our future of work environment, we've been able to bring in virtually Roy Bridges, the 7th director, and finally Bob Cabana, who is KSC's 10th director. Thank you all for joining the panel today. As we celebrate our 60th anniversary, we hope those at KSC are able to walk away with a better understanding of our history and the leaders who have made this spaceport what it is today. So Roy, let me ask you, I've heard you were one of the first people to envision KSC becoming a spaceport back in the day, and you did a major reorganization at KSC back in 2000. Can you share what was driving your thoughts and planning during that time and how you feel about where KSC is today, being the multi-user spaceport that it is?
Yeah, that was something that happened while we were having an off-site over a couple of days. I went for an early morning run on the beach, and we were looking for some vision of what KSC might become in the future. And it just occurred to me that, gosh, we're just going to be one of many spaceports. What can we do to facilitate that? What can we do in terms of research and development to make that more possible? And today, of course, there's more than a dozen spaceports in the U.S. and many more totally around the world. So I think that doing that and thinking about it, this almost got me fired, thinking about a multi-user spaceport. The Air Force wanted to get rid of me because they didn't want to lose control of their land and station and everything like that. But you see today what it has become under the leadership of people who followed me, and that is that we not only have multi-users there of our spaceport, but we have also an industrial park that people thought I was crazy to advocate, and hundreds of jobs. So it's great for the KSC, and it's great for the community, and it's great to advance our space capabilities.
You know, Roy,
Thank you.
I was a GS-15 back then when you were doing that, and I was helping other people. I was in small groups helping other people come up with some of the concepts and visions for that. And I can honestly tell you, we couldn't see what it would look like down the road, but what an amazing concept you had and thought you had and vision you had. And then, you know, really, we needed Bob Cabana to kind of get into that place where we didn't have anything flying. We didn't have a human spaceflight program really going at the time. And he had to figure out other things to do. And he was able to implement a lot of those points in that vision to make what happened happen. So it was, you know, it's interesting that you go all the way from 2000 to 2022 and you realize it in 22 years, all the things we did. That's just absolutely amazing. Great vision, though.
Yeah, I think, Roy, you were probably ahead of your time. And then I think, like Bill, you said, after the flyout of the shuttle program, the opportunity and the environment within the commercial industry allowed Bob to kind of make that vision a reality. So, Bill, let me ask you, as you were leading Kennedy, as we were gearing up for the Constellation program, and then the shuttle program had already been approved to come to an end, Constellation, which was a precursor to the Artemis program, was beginning its development, and the Orion spacecraft was designed for Constellation. How does it feel for you to see Orion atop SLS so close to taking its maiden voyage around the moon on the Artemis program, and does it take you back?
Well, you know, I was doing shuttle return to flight when Sean O'Keefe kind of came up with the vision, a very simple vision is complete the International Space Station, go back to the moon, and on to Mars. And that was an easy concept, but we didn't know how we were going to do that. The Constellation program came around, and you thought, well, okay, this is going to be the first steps that we have, and before you know it, it's canceled, and you're not sure where we're going from there. I'm amazed that SLS got going, that they've funded it, that they've kept it funded for as long as they have, and now the Artemis is sitting out on the launch pad with Orion sitting on top. And I was just talking to some of the folks that are doing the wet dress rehearsal, and they're this close. They're this close to getting this rocket off the pad. And I tell you, it's going to be amazing when we do. And it's the beginning of another historical time in NASA where we're going to be going back to the moon and on to Mars. It's again, one of those moments in time where we'll all look back and remember.
Yep, absolutely. And I hear the excitement from the workforce here today about having that vehicle at the pad, looking forward to a successful wet dress, and then the launch, as you said, is going to be very exciting. So, Bob, I think you were in charge when Constellation was canceled, and that really was not a very fun time in the agency's history. You also had the distinction of being the longest-serving director in Kennedy history. Your tenure spanned the end of the shuttle program and a transition from a government-only facility to the multi-user spaceport. So what was your philosophy in leading the center through one of the biggest changes in its history?
So, you know, first off, an amazing team. Just absolutely privileged to have led such an amazing team and build that team. You know, I don't know if you remember, but when I got to KSC in October of 2008, we still had 12 shuttle missions we had to fly out. And my first all hands, I said, the shuttle program is going to end. We have to start planning for our future. And nobody wanted to hear that. Everybody hates change, but we can't get better without change. And we had to start then. And I think the hardest thing that we had to do was get everybody to own that vision for the future of what we could become. You know, Roy had it back, 8-10 years before I got to KSC, but then being able to actually implement it, having that forcing function of the shuttle coming to an end and then Constellation being canceled. I mean, man, morale was at an all-time low at the end of the shuttle program. I mean, we laid off we went from a workforce of 15,000 down to 7,500 in less than 2 years. And it was a tough time. But I think
Yeah.
having that team come together, having a vision for the future and clearly communicating that vision to the team, and then as we iterated it every year, refining it and moving forward to try and implement it. But I think the key thing there is, it comes down to taking care of your people, servant leadership, putting the welfare of the team
Yeah.
above your own, communicating a clear vision for the future, and getting the team to own that vision. You can't direct it. The team has to own it if you're really going to implement change, and then iterating it year by year moving forward. So, I guess the thing I would say is it comes down to getting the right people in the right jobs, providing them clear direction on what you want to have happen, letting them own that, making sure they have the resources to be successful, and turn them loose. Put their welfare above your own, and have a clear vision of what you want to accomplish.
Well,
And let me add something there. One of the things that I know Jay, Roy, Bob, all of us know is that you're a member of this community. And one of the hardest things in the world is to go to the Publix and somebody walk up to you and say, when is my job coming to an end? When am I going to get laid off? And I tell you, I didn't have I don't know if I had the courage to keep answering that question. And for Bob to come in and do that and close down the shuttle program and move to the next, whatever the future was coming, that was amazing, because it is not an easy thing to do, to lay off 7,500 people. I mean, my goodness, that's difficult.
absolutely. Thank you for that, Bill. And it was a challenging time. And I can remember also at the grocery store, people would say, "Wait, I thought NASA went away, or I thought Kennedy was closed." And so how you kept that messaging that no, there was a bright future out there, and working towards that bright future. Roy, let me go to you. So you led KSC through the loss and the recovery of Columbia. What are some of the things that have stayed with you regarding the challenges of those days and the months of leading KSC through another emotional period of dealing with the loss, but learning and moving forward?
That was a very, very tough time. And I spent a lot of time walking around to all of the shops, and people there were mourning, and their feelings were really right out there on their sleeve. I mean, for example, I went to the shop where they were sewing the fabric, the heat shielding fabric on the shuttle, and they felt like they had some role in causing the Columbia to go down. And I told them, I said, look, we will get to the bottom of this. And we did. We had an amazing team from KSC, supplemented by folks from many federal agencies and other centers, that went out and basically found all the pieces of Columbia. And we brought those pieces home, and we laid them out in the floor of the hangar out at the SLF, and found out conclusively exactly what happened. And of course, you all know the answer. I won't get into that. But I thought, as a healing measure, after we had finished all of the recovery, I had all of the people come out to that hangar on buses and walk through that wreckage so that they could see that we brought Columbia home. And we learned from it. And we put those pieces up in the VAB, well organized, so that we could support research and other endeavors in future years. And I credit a lot of this. Our leader of our team was Mike Leinbach. Did a great job, and he wrote up a lot of the details of this in a book called Bringing Columbia Home. A very emotional time. And just to cap this off, We had a memorial service for the people we lost on Columbia out at the SLF. A lot of people from the center, as well as even the governor of Florida and all the other dignitaries. And I remember that morning the weather was a little shaky, and of course I had the world's best weather officer, John Maduro. I got his feeling on, hey, is it going to rain? Do we need to do this inside? Because I really wanted to do it on the runway, get the full effect of this. And I finally decided we put on the runway, come whatever. And I'm sitting there and we're just getting started, and I'm in the audience facing the governor of Florida, and a big raindrop hit me right on top of my head, and I kind of flinched. And Governor of Florida had a big smile, and I just put my hands up. It is what it is. Then at the exact time that Columbia was supposed to land, 4 T-38s came out of the fog right down the runway and pulled up into a missing man formation. And I'll tell you, very tough to keep my composure at that moment.
Hey, thank you for sharing that, Roy. I know to this day, members of the workforce proudly talk about being a part of that recovery operation. And also, as you know, the Columbia room is still open, and there's a lot of interest, and we have a lot of, even our commercial partners want to go and kind of walk through and learn that lesson, reflect on the job that they have at hand, particularly in launching humans to space. So thank you for sharing that. Let me see.
Hey, Janet, I'd like to chip in a little bit on that. So, I look back on it, that was just a tremendously hard time. And at the time we lost Columbia, I was the director of flight crew operations at JSC. And I will never forget being out at midfield, waiting for Columbia to come home and not having them come home. And I did not realize how much that impacted me and affected me from that time forward. But one of the things that I am so proud of as director of KSC is Forever Remembered. And doing Forever Remembered over in the Atlantis facility and honoring the crews of Challenger and Columbia and having that flight hardware displayed and seeing the recovery and telling the story of all the crew members and what happened and how we rose above it. And when the families came and toured that brought healing to me. And I just, Roy, the way we treated Columbia, it was so different from Challenger, and having it secured in the vehicle assembly building and bringing people through and helping folks learn from it. I think that was really important. So my hat's off to you, sir, for helping make that happen. And I just Forever Remembered is really special. Hey, Janet, I got a question for you. We went through a pretty phenomenal transition together from the end of the shuttle to being this multi-user spaceport that KSC is today. And it's pretty amazing, the launch rate down there. What do you think about this increasing launch rate, and what do you see for the future of KSC beyond where we are now?
Well, thank you, Bob, for that question. I'll start off by saying we are super busy at KSC and a multi-user spaceport. As you mentioned, we had 31 launches last year, and as you all know, we support every single launch, whether it's on our property or on the property of the Space Force across the river. So we had 31 last year. We have 67 this year, and it is, I firmly believe that within the next couple years, we will be over 100 launches a year, which, even 5 years ago would have been unthinkable to think we would be supporting that many launches. But we have a whole bunch of partners with a whole bunch of interest in launching from our multi-user spaceport. So our job is to make sure that we're supporting all of them, whether it's the NASA programs or our commercial partners in doing their launch and processing operations successfully. What I really see happening even today is a consolidation of a lot of those processing operations at the Kennedy Space Center. a lot of companies are thinking that they can bring their processing operations closer to the launch head, then it becomes very much more efficient than if they process elements and then transport them down to the Kennedy Space Center. So you'll see Blue Origin, I think it was Roy mentioned an industrial park outside Exploration Park. They have a number of manufacturing facilities that dominate the landscape. And within our controlled space here down at Roberts Road, SpaceX is doing the same thing with their Falcon 9 refurbishment, their fairing recovery, and their Starship operations that they are moving here, consolidating their processing operations here on our center. And Artemis is doing the same thing. There's a huge interest in the SLS program and other elements of the Artemis program to bring them here to the Space Center and process them here instead of at the remote location. So as we go forward, that's what I see more and more of, is a consolidation of operations here. And our job, it's a big job still, is to support and ensure that our NASA programs are successful. And we rely on our commercial partners as part of the Artemis program going forward. So we've got to be successful supporting all of that. Okay, so thank you, Bob, for that question. So let me ask this. When you assumed the position of Center Director, did anybody give you one nugget of wisdom that helped set the stage for a new role and leadership? What wisdom did you pass on to your successor? And Bill, I'm going to ask you, and I'm going to keep you honest because, I was there.
Yes, you were. Probably I've gotten it. First of all, let me take this occasion to say what an honor and privilege it is to be here with these center directors, and former center directors and center director of the Kennedy Space Center. Not only have they been my mentors throughout my career, they've been my friends, and they've been my colleagues. And I can just tell you, each and every one of them have provided me with advice and guidance throughout my life and throughout my career. Really, really tell you that I really appreciate each and every one of you and all the things you've accomplished and helped me accomplish throughout this time. The one thing I would say is Jay Honeycutt probably had more influence over me than most. And I spent a lot of time with Jay. Jay asked me to be his management intern, and he told me at the time, he said, Bill, this is maybe a 6-month assignment. If it's 4 months, don't get your feelings hurt. If it's 8 months, don't get the big head. And so, that was kind of the first part of that. It turned out that at that period of time in his career, Jay was getting ready to be asked to take over from Bob Crippen and be the center director. And Jay asked me to stay on a little bit longer. So I spent a long period of time with Jay getting to watch how NASA worked and the inner workings of the leadership of NASA. He introduced me to some of the finest people I'll ever know and people that helped my career from that point forward. But I think the biggest thing I learned from Jay was, tell me how you can, not why you can't. And I think a lot of his management interns, his Bubba's, all can say that one because we all remember that was beat into us, is tell me how you can, not why you can't. It might be that he can't afford it or we can't, we don't have enough time to do it, but there's a way to do it. Just tell me the way to do it, and then I'll decide if we do it or if we don't do it. And so we approached a lot of problems and a lot of situations with that philosophy in mind. So that was the one piece that I got.
Yeah, the yes if answer instead of no, we can't do it. It's leaning forward. So Jay, any nuggets of wisdom that you got from mentors or you want to pass on?
Well, my biggest mentor was George Abbey out in Houston, who was the director of the Johnson Center for a number of years and who I've served as a management intern for. And George, I learned more from him than anybody else I ever worked for. I tried to implement some of it. I wasn't capable of implementing all of the things that he was able to do, but if I needed help, I pretty much got it from him.
Thank you. And Roy, how about you?
Well, the thing that stuck with me the most is a little saying, if you're not successful on the first try, try again. And that was really, I saw that in my life because I wanted to be an aviator, I wanted to be a test pilot, I wanted to be an astronaut. And at pilot training, my first 9 flights, I got a fair, which is just one step above, failing. My 10th flight was a washout check ride. I got an excellent on that ride and I never looked back. So I think that's true in all of our lives, in that we're going to run into some difficult situations. And it may take a couple of tries before we get it right. And of course, as people have already said on here this morning, that it's a team effort. So it's the team getting it right that at the end of the day makes the biggest difference. Thank you.
Thank you, Roy. And Bob, any nuggets you'd like to add?
Well, I've been privileged to work for so many great leaders over the years. I think, I look back on some center directors that aren't here, and Forrest McCartney was someone that was really looked up to when he was leading the Kennedy Space Center. And I think one of the biggest things that I took away from what I saw with Forrest and what I've gotten from other leaders is that you really need to get out of that corner office. You can't run a center. You can't be a leader sitting in meetings all the time. You have to get out and meet the people. You have to talk to them. You have to allow them to show you what they're doing. You have to genuinely care about the health and welfare of the team that you're privileged to lead. And I think that more than anything, I hope, that's how I'm remembered at KSC, that I genuinely cared about the team and helped us move forward under some difficult circumstances. And I go along with what Roy said, is in judging people, the people that work for you, not everybody's going to be successful on the first try. And the true measure of a person is not the mistakes that he or she makes. It's how do they respond to them. Do they let them mire them down in the muck, or do they rise above them and go on to do greater things? And, you got to challenge folks, okay? And there's a difference between somebody who makes a mistake and somebody who's willfully negligent. But people are going to make mistakes. Make sure that they make mistakes on little things that they learn from, and that they, when they're in charge of something big and it's really expensive, that they've learned on those smaller projects so that they can do well on the larger ones. But, be understanding also.
I think the biggest mistake I ever made was telling Jay Honeycutt I could drink red wine all night long.
Did you prove it?
George
No.
and I proved him to be wrong.
Oh, that's great.
Hey,
Yeah,
Janet, could I just jump?
yeah,
Could
go
I
ahead.
say one thing here? So Bob mentioned Forrest McCartney, and Forrest was still at KSC. We had an office in a little trailer down at Cape Canaveral, and every couple of weeks I would go down and have lunch with Forrest and let him tell me everything I was doing wrong. That was always very, very helpful to me. I always really enjoyed Forrest. Thank you.
Thank you, Roy. I get so my boss is still Bob. He was it before and he is now. So I get that same feeling. But a lot of support there. Let me see. So Roy, you are the only center director that I'm aware of that has a piece of infrastructure named after you. And I'm told that when the team was seeking approval at the agency level to have something named after you, they were told something to the effect of, as long as the name ends in the word bridge, you are approved for this. So do you have any thoughts or comments on that?
Okay, well, this started out as somewhat of a joke. I'm at my going away party, and all of a sudden, Jim Kennedy, who followed me as center director, sorry I can't be here today, announced this naming of the bridge over Banana River after me. And I thought it was kind of a joke, but then they went out and put a sign up. And, since since then, a lot of people said, "Hey, I just went over your bridge." Now, the amazing thing is, about 2 weeks ago, I went down to my hometown of Gainesville, Georgia. And can you imagine, after more than 50 years, the town of Gainesville, Georgia had me down to unveil a street sign. So there in Georgia, there's now a Major General Roy Bridges Boulevard. It sounds like a really big street, but it's actually a really dinky little street connecting a major thoroughfare to a Georgia Exploration Academy, which is kind of associated with NASA's STEM program. So yeah, this is really special to me, and I will tell you that I know it didn't work out for more than the first 10 years, but working with Cape Canaveral and the Air Force to have a contractor manage the infrastructure of both KSC and Cape Canaveral really was amazingly helpful, because we were going through this existential experience of trying to go from 2,500 people, civil servants, down to 1,490 in a few years. And I needed to save our best and brightest for the future. And, managing infrastructure was not the most important thing for that future. So the first day of this contract of bridging the river, so to speak, of KSC and Cape Canaveral, we hired 500 fewer people. And NASA Administrator Dan Golden was so skeptical of this concept that he said, "Look, as an incentive, if you can do this, I'll let you keep all the money in the budget that you save." And we saved over $70 million over that, that period of time, that we were able to invest in strategic projects at KSC to help our people see that we have a future and we can do some great things for this nation.
Well, thank you for that, and I will tell you your namesake bridge, the Roy D. Bridges Bridge, the sign's still there, and it's not going to be small and dinky. We are going to eventually make it a lot bigger and start bringing some payloads and heavy lifting things over. We've been talking with the Space Force about that because a number of our partners want to do that. So we'll see. It may become a pretty important bridge in the future. So let me see. Let me ask a question. What's a standout moment from your career that makes you feel the most proud? And Jay, let me start with you.
Well, as old as I am, I had a lot of them, but I think there's one thing that's not very well known about the Kennedy Space Center that's probably as important as anything it's ever done, and that is when Space Station was being built back in the late 90s, it was a mess. And George Abbey and others out in Houston were trying to get the contractors all pulled together and get the hardware in line to meet any of the goals. They couldn't get the node out of Huntsville. They couldn't get anything out of the people out in California. So George called and he said, "Hey, I got a lot of people out here that know this hardware, but they only know it as a schematic. Your guys actually know hardware as hardware. How about loaning me some of them and let them go into these factories and see if they can figure out what's going on?" So I called Tip Talone over to my office, and I made somewhat of a mistake. I told him he had 15 first-round draft choices to go pick from on the center and go see if they can do that. First one he got was Bill, then he got Nicole Scott, then he got Bill Dowdell, Don Shrivel, and several others that I can't remember to mention. And they went into to the factories and started pointing out to the people out in Houston in the program office what was wrong with all these factories and why the hardware couldn't get out there. And today, George Abbey will tell you that that was perhaps the most significant thing that was able to be accomplished to get the space station built, flown, and assembled.
And people talk about that still to this day of going back to the factories and doing that. And I know, Bill, if you wanted to jump in here and
Well,
talk about that experience.
I'd just say that he picked some of the, well, first of all, picking Tip to lead that was the best thing he could have ever done. And then Tip went and picked 15 first-round draft choices. And I can honestly tell you that when you're surrounded by excellence, surrounded by that kind of talent, it's hard not to be successful. And we were sent out to do a job, and we were supported tremendously from upper-level management. I mean, between Jay and George Abbey and all those folks, we had complete 100% support, and it was the reason that we were able to do that. I'll tell you, we all remember that as some of our biggest accomplishments that we ever had. And go ahead, Bob. I'm sorry.
I just got to say, so I remember, that first flight. And if you all remember, the whole process was going to be ship and shoot. Build it, ship it to KSC, shoot it to space, and it was all going to work. And we ended up doing the Mission Essential Integration Test, MEIT, down at KSC. And I remember working hours down there on the node, testing that software, finding issues that they never found in the testing at Boeing in Houston in the software facility. And I tell you, had we not done that MEIT down at KSC with the folks integrating the hardware down there with the emulator for the FGB, using the real computers and software on the node, I don't think we'd have been successful. And I credit what Tiff and your team at KSC did, making sure that when we got on orbit and we activated the ISS, I'll tell you, nobody was more surprised than me when I sent those commands on the computer and everything worked exactly as it was supposed to. And it was all due to that MEIT testing at KSC.
Still the greatest engineering feat, putting that ISS together, right, and having it all come together up in space. So anybody else want to add anything to that, Jay?
Yeah, Janet, this is Roy.
Go ahead, Roy.
I just want to say that I agree 100% with what's been said here, that I think the success of the ISS over its now more than 20-year lifetime was the MEIT and how Tip Talon and all of his superstars pulled that together. I'm just most impressed by that. And I would just like to say one other thing as an organizational leader. The other thing that I'm really impressed about KSC is how the launch services program, which came down to KSC while I was the center director, and their phenomenal success over the years to me is also one of the standouts of what KSC and its people can do. Thank you.
And Roy, I would add to that, that is a model for how an organization, a program can be put together and run. Seriously, the LSP program has so much to offer to the other programs that are here at KSC and throughout NASA, and I think there's some emulation that should occur there.
You know, they really were the first commercial to make use of commercial partners and do it in a different, acquire things in a different way. And I do believe they're one of the crown jewels in this agency, and they, you know, as you said, still remain so today. And they're really world renowned as launch vehicle experts, which make us really, really proud here at Kennedy Space Center.
Mm-hmm.
All right, so I'm gonna, we've been talking about the KSC workforce. I'm gonna ask you guys, what is the most important advice that you would share with our workforce today here at KSC? And I'll start with Jay.
Well, I think it's to share with what the workforce today is pretty much to share with what was shared with them all through, certainly through shuttle and potentially through days before that, and that's, do your work, do it right. Remember who you're working for, because you're working for the people that are going to be flying in this thing, and every single one of you is responsible for the success of the mission. So keep your ears open, your mouth shut, and do your job.
That's a little hard in today's workforce, but I get take the point. Bill, how about you?
Well, I think Jay just said it, but I also think, one of the things that we have here at KSC, one of the things this whole workforce has is integrity. And that integrity goes over when they make a mistake, they have to be able to step up and say, I made a mistake, and let people know. And I think that's one thing that we need to keep within this workforce, is that integrity of our work and what we do, and to make sure that everyone takes that seriously, because that is what keeps the men and women that ride in our rockets safe, but it also ensures that we get those multi-billion-dollar satellites in space properly as well. So, again.
Yeah, it's a part of our KSC culture to have that integrity, and it's one of the things I'm most proud of. Let me see, Roy, any advice you'd give to the workforce?
Well, I just want to say what I always tell folks is, both individually and as an organization, go for it. Be all that you can be. Because people working together sometimes don't realize what they can rise to, what they can do for this nation. And I think over the years, KSC has demonstrated that over and over, and continue to do so today. I'm so proud of them. Thank you.
Thank you, Roy. And Bob, any advice you'd give?
Well, I heartily concur with everything that everyone has said thus far. I'll throw in one more, and it's more a leadership thing also. But I would say never say no to an assignment. When your boss asks you to go do something, even if it's something that you don't want to do, yes, sir, yes, ma'am, and go off and do your very best at it and learn from it. And I've had a few assignments I've been asked to go do that I didn't necessarily want to go do, but I learned from them, and they made me better. And I would say, don't say no when you're asked to go do something. Rise to the occasion and do your very best at it.
I have to add to that, Bob. I got a call one time from a guy named George Abbey, and he said, can you go, I'd like for you to go do this job at the Johnson Space Center. And I said, George, I don't want to move to Houston. And I hung up, and he said, okay, and I hung up. And then just minutes later, I get a call from a guy named Jay Honeycutt, and he said, I don't think you understood. That wasn't a question. So I moved to Houston to work at the Johnson Space Center for Mr. George Abbey, and it was the best thing that I ever did. So,
yeah, getting out of your comfort zone and saying yes when maybe you don't want to. Great advice. So I'm biased. My favorite center, I say this without hesitation, is the Kennedy Space Center. I love everything about it. The workforce, I think it's the not only the biggest physically, but the best. But I know a couple of you have also been center directors at other centers. So Bob and Roy, I'm going to put you on the spot and ask you, what's your favorite center that you have been the privilege of being the center director of?
So you said Bob first, so I guess I got to go first. So what I will say is, in my current position, all our centers play a crucial role in making NASA successful.
Oh, Bob, you've become way too political. You've been in D.C. too long.
I gotta say, I absolutely love my time at KSC. The mission, I love my time at Stennis. I love my time at JSC and all the centers that I've gotten to work at over the years, TDY and so on. But there's something special about seeing rockets launch into space, and I don't care if there's humans or cargo on them or science missions. When a rocket ship leaves planet Earth, that is an amazing event that is emotional. It's sight, sound, feel. It's the whole ball of wax. And being able to see that on a regular basis and have an integral role in making that happen. KSC is a special place.
All right. Roy, how about you?
Can you see that?
Don't forget your days living on the beach and launching rockets from the KSC External Relations staff. Yes.
That was my motto down there. Clearly, throughout across my whole career, and I've been a lot of different places. Living on the beach in Cocoa Beach and being privileged to be the center director of the KSC was it was my very favorite. And I'll just say echo Bob's words about some of the thrills that you get from being there and doing that. It was really great.
Smoke and fire. Thank you. All right. One last question I'm going to ask all of you. Can you imagine and share with us what you think KSC will be like in 60 years? And Jay, let me start with you.
I don't have any idea. I mean, when you look at how much it's changed in the last 60, I don't even comprehend. I mean, maybe there's nobody down here working. Robots are doing everything. You know, you never. I don't have enough vision to guess what 60 years from now it's going to be like. But I do know that if Kennedy Space Center's got anything to do with it, it's going to be done just right and in a safe manner.
Thank you. Bill, how about you?
Oh my goodness. You know, we always seem to come full circle, so I think we'll go back to seeing launches and landings right here at Kennedy and just going into space, doing our job, and coming back right here to the Kennedy Space Center like we always have, or like we did in the past. So, you know, maybe it's a spaceport just like Roy Bridges envisioned one day, only more like the Jetsons than I can even imagine.
Okay. Thank you. Bob?
Yeah, I will second that. You know, it's hard to predict the future, but I do know that the KSC team is going to play a key role in keeping our nation a leader in space. And I'm kind of with you. I think that, you know, we are going to have the spaceport of the future where folks are flying to and from low Earth orbit and beyond. Just like you're going into Orlando International, this will be space port interstellar or whatever. But I believe that KSC is going to play a key role in our nation's future, and it's because of the people that make it the special place that it is.
Thank you. And Roy?
Well, let's see. When I graduated from high school, the year was 1961, and that was the year when the Russians flew the first person in space. We put Alan Shepard up to the edge of space, and President Kennedy announced that we're going to the moon. So in these next 60 years, and probably come sooner than later, we'll be back to the moon and on to Mars. And KSC will be a big part of making those things happen and happen successfully. It's going to be an exciting time, another golden age of our space program.
Well, thank you all for those answers. And let me thank all of you for joining us today as we celebrate 60 years of Kennedy Space Center. I hope that you've enjoyed this discussion and that you were able to gain maybe a little insight and maybe even your own nuggets of wisdom. By honoring the lessons of our past, we are better equipped to lead the future from all of us. Thank you. Happy anniversary, KSC.
Happy anniversary,
Happy
Kennedy
anniversary,
Space Center.
Center.